Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Elizabeth and I run the blog lifefromtheviolasection.com where I share my favorite practice tips, general advice, and tech for musicians. Today, in honor of the new year, I thought it might be helpful to go over how to create a consistent practice routine. So if you've been unhappy with your practicing in the past, or if you're just looking to get better, or if you're even just picking up an instrument for the first time, it's really important to have a great practice routine. And now is a great time to kind of revive that and start fresh. So these are going to be some of my best tips for creating a practice routine and keeping it up and maybe changing your goals whenever you need to. So having a practice routine is really important because the more consistent you are, the faster you're gonna progress. And just know that when you're learning an instrument, and really anything in general, progress is never really linear. It doesn't go, okay, I've spent more time, so I'm just getting better and better and better and better. There are peaks and valleys in progress. There are gonna be times where you learn a ton on your instrument and then you might start to peak and feel like you can't do anything anymore. And then you make another great, monumental piece of progress and then you have some trouble again. It comes and goes, and that's totally normal. I know it can feel really discouraging when you hit one of those peaks and then start to decline, but it's all part of the learning process. The more that you practice, generally the faster that you're gonna learn, and hopefully the faster you'll get out of ruts as well. The more often that you practice, just the better you're going to reinforce muscle memory and everything that you have to think in your brain, and you're just gonna get to know your instrument more intimately. So if you practice once a week for 2 hours to prepare for your lesson or for rehearsal, whatever it may be, you might make a lot of progress in that 1-2 hour session, but by the next time you come to your instrument, you will not have retained all that much, unfortunately. It's kind of like cramming for a test versus studying over a longer period of time. If you're taking your time with that information, even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes a day, over a longer period of time, you're more likely to remember it and you're more likely for it to stick with you after you take the test than if you just study for an hour or two the night before the test, you take the test, and then a week later, you can't remember any of those things that you studied. Practicing is the exact same way. So the more often that you practice, even if it's just in very small chunks, the more you're going to reinforce those good habits and the things that you're learning, the more you're going to retain them in both your brain and your muscle memory. So that's basically why we want to create a practice routine. We want to be able to have reliable times that we practice so that we can make consecutive progress often. So before you start to map out what your practice routine is going to be, it's really helpful to set some goals. SMART goals are really great. It is an acronym. So the S stands for specific, the M stands for measurable, the A stands for achievable, the R stands for reliable, and T is for time bound. So you want to create goals that are really going to work for you, that you can reliably achieve. It gives you a really good target that you're going to aim for and hopefully reach that goal. It's better than just saying, okay, by the end of the year, I want to be able to play this piece. Well, think about the piece that you want to learn. Does it include shifting? Will you need a lot of vibrato? Is it in a specific key? Think about those, all of the concepts that go into that piece. And then you can start to think, okay, do I know how to shift to 6th position? Am I comfortable playing up there? If not, one of your goals can be learning 6th position, maybe doing some exercises for 6th position and getting more comfortable with those notes. Then that itself is a goal, and it's part of your progress towards that ultimate harder to reach goal that is much less detailed. You can also think about vibrato. You could make a goal that is, I want to play multiple different types of vibrato, and I want to be able to pick and choose what I want to do whenever I want. Because it's one thing, sorry, I'm a violist, so this is going to be very upper string centric today, in my examples at least. So, when you start to learn vibrato, you might be able to do one type. And it's great that you can do vibrato at all, and it's getting more consistent, but it's one type. But to make music really, really interesting, at least with vibrato, you can change it up. You can have a fast, narrow vibrato. You could have a slow, wide vibrato. You can do a mix of different things. But these different types of vibrato kind of represent different emotions or different kind of settings. So it's really, really important as you get more and more advanced on the instrument to be able to play around with different types of vibrato for different situations. It'll make you such a better player. It makes your music just come alive, and it's really, really exciting. So that's a good goal, to be able to play with different types of vibrato once you've achieved vibrato in general. So after you've made your goals, even if it's just one goal, that's totally fine. Now we want to figure out when to practice. So take a look at your schedule, see if there are any kind of small moments where you don't tend to do anything or have anything scheduled. So maybe that's right after dinner, maybe it's right before you go to work, maybe it's right after you get home from school, maybe it's right before bed, anything like that. Find those little chunks. These are going to be great starting places for adding in new practice sessions. Also think about, when do you usually practice right now? You know, if you have been practicing an instrument. When tends to work out for you and when doesn't? Use those kinds of statistics in your mind to figure out, okay, these are gonna probably be good practice times and these probably won't. So once you figure out those times, actually add these to your calendar. And if you do that on your phone, then put it in your calendar app and set a reminder for it too, so that you actually remember to do this new habit. Another great way to start a new habit is by, I think it's called habit pairing. So take a habit that you already have. Maybe it's eating a snack when you get home and watching TV or something. Anytime you do that routine, you're going to practice right after and add that new routine in. So you've already got something that you reliably do. Now add something else that happens right after it, or right before it, but right after is a little bit easier to remember and to start doing. And then you're more likely to remember to do the thing and to actually make it part of your routine. So great little hack for starting up something new. When you're doing all of this, feel free to just start small. Just add little 5 or 10 minute sessions at the start. Or, if you're going from 1 practice day a week, try 2 or 3. And then after you're used to that, add even more and more and more, and maybe longer and longer and longer sessions. Just be patient with yourself. Give yourself a small starting goal, at least, in terms of how much you're practicing, and then gradually bump it up and up and up and up. So that leads to the next kind of topic, which is how to know when to adjust your goals and maybe to adjust your routine a little bit. So anytime where you feel like this is a little too easy, or maybe you've gotten into a new orchestra or something and you have way more to practice now, any kind of growth like that, I think, is a good opportunity and indicator to raise your goals, or to raise the amount of time that you're practicing, or to raise the number of days that you're practicing. So those are good times to kind of take inventory and see, okay, am I practicing enough? Do I need to practice more, or is this still comfortable? And experiment with adding in more practice sessions or longer practice sessions in the same way that you originally added the practice sessions that we just talked about. Your practicing will change as you grow as a person and as a musician. It'll change depending on where you are, what time of year it is, if you have a lot of concerts in 1 month and if you don't in another month. Just be patient with yourself and stay flexible. That's one of the most important things when you're practicing or trying to keep any kind of routine. So just keep that in mind and just be good to yourself. So coming up with these goals and starting a routine can be kind of simple, but keeping that routine going over time can be pretty difficult. So right at the start, as you're beginning this routine, keep it as consistent as you possibly can. Try to practice at the same time of day if you're able to, if your schedule allows. Try not to make excuses and just do it each time that you have it scheduled. And that's really going to help the habit stick in your brain, in your schedule, everything. And hopefully it'll help you keep up that routine a little bit easier. So I know practicing can get a bit boring over time. I feel like that's one of the reasons why so many people quit music. It's either practicing is boring, or the instrument is too hard, or they run out of time. I think those are kind of the most common excuses or reasons for leaving lessons or for not playing an instrument anymore. So try to keep things interesting in your practice, especially if it starts to get boring. But even before it gets boring, try to keep it interesting. Then that can motivate you and excite you to practice the next day and the next time around. So keeping things interesting might be listening to a piece that you really love and then finding the sheet music and trying it for yourself, even if it's, a little bit too hard or a little too easy. just try it. Play along with a recording. It's so much fun, even if you're kind of struggling along. I find it to be fun anyway, just because it feels like I'm like in the environment of the music. Even if I'm not doing too great, I'm just enjoying hearing that music and feeling like I'm a part of it. Another thing you could do is just sort of different warm-ups. You could put on like a cool chord progression on YouTube and improvise on top of it. You could do your scales with a backing track, anything to just make it more interesting. Some people even practice in front of the TV watching, their favorite shows or movies. I feel like that's not a very great thing to do because you can't fully focus on either thing. But I guess if you're just kind of trying to get your fingers moving, it's not too bad. I would try to stay focused on what you're doing personally, but some people swear by that, just practicing in front of their TV. Personally, I've never tried it, and I don't really want to create that habit because I don't think it would be very good for me. If you have a friend who's also looking to change up their practice sessions, maybe you could get together and just practice together, warm up, play some duets, do some tunes, jam a little bit. Anything like that can totally change it up and make things a lot more fun. If you don't live close to anyone who has similar goals to you, you can always make a Zoom practice room or join one online. There are a couple different ones that I've seen around on Instagram. People have created these weekly or monthly Zoom rooms where you just go in, you say hi to each other, maybe have a little bit of a conversation, and then you go and practice, still, with your camera on but muted. You practice for like 15, 30, 45 minutes, and then you take a break together, then you go back. It's kind of the Pomodoro technique where you work for a bit and then you break, and then you work for a bit, you have a break. So just being around other people and kind of having that body doubling can be really helpful to actually stay productive and to not slack off. It holds you accountable, which is really, really nice. Just changing things up can keep things exciting and it can keep you motivated, and it'll make you look forward to the next practice session, especially if you plan, okay, on Thursdays, I'm going to warm up with a backing track, or on Fridays, I just play my favorite music and I forget about the things that I have to work on. That can just keep you excited and it can get you through the week. My final tip for creating a sustainable practice routine is to keep track of your progress and to occasionally look back on that progress. So when I was in college, I used to keep practice journals and I would try to make them very detailed. Of course, if I didn't have a lot of time in a day, I wouldn't write all that much, but I would note all of the things that I did in that practice session, just separated by like, okay, warm up, this piece that I worked on, this one, this one, this one. And I would have bullet points on how far I worked, how long I worked for, any observations that I noticed in that practice session, and if I had any goals for the next practice session regarding that specific thing that I did today. Those were so helpful, and I do like to look back on them occasionally to see, okay, what was I practicing, and are there any exercises I created for myself that I've completely forgotten about that might be helpful for either myself or for a student that I'm working with. But it was also great to look back on. Like when I finished a journal, I could flip back through it and see, oh wow, a couple months ago, I was struggling with this thing. I don't struggle with it anymore. Like that is so easy now. And of course, now I'm onto this other thing that's giving me trouble, but you can really see the progress that you've made that you didn't realize you were making in real time. It can be really helpful, and that can really motivate you to just keep it going and to keep climbing the mountain and practicing more. All right, I hope my tips today will help you create a good practice routine for yourself in the new year. If you have any friends or if you know anyone who just recently started an instrument, please send this video or the blog post to them so that they can get some motivation and set up their practicing in a really, really healthy, sustainable way that will really support them learning their instrument and loving music. If you have any other tips or things that have been helpful for you to create a reliable practice routine, please share them down below. And if you'd like a written guide that you can return back to at any time, be sure to check out the blog post. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks.